Taki, it's good. Very good. Yeah. And a nice beard over there.
You want some drink?
And a nice Snapple. Used to have. Start in a couple of minutes. You. Thank you. Okay. Parshas Shemini is guess has a lot to do with the concept of kapora. You know, what we're willing to take, how we should look at kapora, and so on. And as far as chet goes, Aharon realized that he was chayte by the ego. Now, obviously, he had a cheshbon. He didn't serve the ego. He didn't, what do you call it? His kavanah was Hashem Shemayim. Yeah, but it was Chag Hashem Mocho. He tried to stall as much as he can. And it was all after he killed Chur. And he didn't want it to be a Kohen Navi, be a Mechod. And that would be tremendous, punishments for Klal Yisrael. And with all that, the fact that the ego was Aharon made the ego. And whatever they had to serve, they served because Aharon made it. Whether it was kind of much from the pasuk that he didn't make it, he just threw in the gold and the animal walked out by itself. Whatever shot we want to give to that, if that's what it means, that's what it says. But then when he was retelling the story to Moshe, he just threw the gold in, and that's what happened. That's the case why you're blaming him, but he had some hand involved in that, whatever pshat is. Okay, so that's the thing over there. So he felt that he was, the Bereshim has a taina to him. And the Rabbeinu Shalom, like Rashi says, he tried to show him that he was forgiven for the ego, because he told him that the korban that he's going to bring for chatos is going to be, instead of a par, is going to be an egel. So he's going to be an egel to show that it comes for the ego. Okay, so he knows he's going to be forgiven, but being forgiven doesn't mean that there's no repercussions. There still could be a point of repercussions. There still can be anshim. That's the problem. That seems to be the issue here. And we see this, the Emerson, or like, let's say, for instance, the union of tshuva. Tshuva itself takes 1 second. If a person who's a Rosh Gomer, who's known to everybody as a Rosh Gomer, will marry a woman with this condition, saying, I am marrying you on the condition that I am a tzaddik gomer. Right? The Kedushin is a Sofi Kedushin. Why? Because maybe he had a hero tshuva. He repented in his heart for one split second. That's all it takes. Then you went back to being a Rasha, fine. But at that moment, you were a tzaddik. It could be you were married. So we can't really say, look at him, he's a Rasha. He's definitely not married. It's no proof. Because that split second, he could have been a tzaddik. So all it takes is a split second. So what is it? But that doesn't end the thing. There's sometimes you need kapore. It's not enough just to do tshuva. So you have like halachas like this in regular tshuva. When we have, if you're doing a tshuva for an essay, you didn't do mitzvahs of an essay that you should have done. So that you bring, that you do tshuva, but I didn't like Trishma Bismana. I'm taking something we sometimes didn't even think it's a big important thing. Whatever it is, and even with the zilzal of it. If you do tshuva, you don't leave that place. It's forgiven, forgotten. It's all over. You don't have to do anything more. If you do a lav, so then the din is you have to have tshuva and Yom HaKippurim. And that's mechaper. If you do a lav that has chorus or misas bezdin, then you have to have tshuva, Yom Kippur, and after Yom Kippur, you first get Yisurim. That means the next year, after the Veda was done last year, and Yom Kippur is this year, and following that, I'm first going to get Yisurim. And that Yisurim, I always time has to be somewhat similar to death. Doesn't mean you'd have to die or something like that. It means that you can have a fear of death, in other words, that you actually thought you were going to die or stuff like that. And anything, and that would be the forgiveness. Okay. And you hear that expression, "Arois zu the Shrek." In other words, the fear is as good as the death itself. That is so. Therefore, even though he was forgiven in the sense, but there's going to be an einish that's going to be extracted for it. That's the shayla. And he wasn't sure what this einish is going to be, and he felt that it would be a complete rejection of himself as being Kohen Gadol. Now, Moshe is encouraging him and saying, "L'kach l'tata, you were picked for this," as the Rashi points out. So, why are you hesitating? Go on, you were picked for this. Yet we see that that Aaron was right. The God was out to embarrass him. He didn't bring the Shekhinah down right away. That wasn't the point. But that Aaron was not afraid of that. That's a small price to pay for forgiveness. If I can get forgiveness for my chatoyim by bushe, then I'll take the bushe. I'm forgiven. That is the pain. That's the punishment. Okay, I took the punishment and I'm forgiven now. It's gone. It's all over. Now I can be close to God. Now I can do whatever I want. I'm free. So my Aaron also was like that, but he thought it would be a complete rejection. In other words, that he was not able to become the Kohen Gadol anymore. Now the truth is, Aaron is the Kohen Gadol. I mean, whatever we're going to complain about, I mean, Moshe was bigger than Aaron, and he should have been the Kohen Gadol, as this was pointed out in Parshas Shmos. That pshat is Aaron Achicha Levi. The pshat is that once he was supposed to be the Levi, you were going to be the Kohen Gadol. Now you're going to be the Levi, and he's going to be the Kohen Gadol. The idea was because, and there is nobody like Aaron in Klal Yisrael of as Oyev Shalom, the Leidiv Shalom, like Aaron was. In other words, you would take impossible cases that it's impossible to make peace over there, and he would attempt it, and he would be successful because he wanted to make peace. And that's what qualified him for being the Kohen Gadol. And that's a qualification that no matter who you are, how big a tzaddik you are, if you don't have that in you, you're not qualified to be Kohen Gadol. It doesn't make a difference. And that was Aaron. And he was. And ultimately, all that was missing was that he needed that the Rebbeinu was out to embarrass him, and he did embarrass him, but he didn't deprive him for all time. He only just did for that moment, that to know that he did a chet, they did tshuva, God has forgiven him, and now the Shemini comes down. He wasn't finished. He lost 2 of his children, which is also part of that, because Rashi says in Parshas where he says that, and I was bespelled for Aaron at that time, and Rashi says God listened to me for half. He said he had 4 sons, 2 he saved and 2 he killed. So therefore, that the 2 sons he lost was because of the ego. But again, you can't just lose a person that's a grown-up because you did an avera. The pain you deserve, but that person doesn't deserve to die. And if he doesn't deserve to die, he will forgive you. He will make it that he doesn't die, or whatever it is. So therefore, the person has to deserve to die. You have to deserve the pain. If you don't deserve the pain, he again won't die. Now, with everybody, the benshams, the daina emes, that everybody that's affected by a person's demise, that everyone deserved whatever tzar he got out of it. That's the thing is there. Okay. And they thought whatever they thought, Nodav Avihu, the same thing. The fact that they were Moy Haloch L'fnei Rabbim, I think that is really the biggest problem that they had. I mean, there's questions of what actually did they do wrong. I mean, they saw L'fnei Hashem, okay. What was the error in that? It was an error in judgment, an error in they thought what the tzifu would be. You find that we have to do something ourselves. We have to be shnei gizli. Every time you have to, the kohanim have to bring added wood. It's not enough what they're being makriv in the thing. There's a fire burning on his bed. They have to keep that fire going. But they don't, obviously, shnei gizli is not a big deal. So that's got to be a big fire going. And then obviously that fire is always burning and burning and burning, but you have to add something to it. So maybe they thought they had to do that too. I don't know. Or maybe they thought there's 2 ways of making a reich mechoyach Hashem, like Noach did, that they by doing all the avodah himself, if they have the right kavanas, you can bring down such a thing, whatever it is that they can make a reich mechoyach, as opposed to where God is willing to give it to you, to grant you that reich mechoyach, which was he comes down and takes the fire himself, makes the fire himself. Whatever the shad is. But the problem that existed, the Nodav Avihu, we see more problems that they had. They had ideas of, it's not a problem, I don't understand it, because it's very possible, when they were supposedly they were watching Moshe and Aaron, how they were handling things, and they're saying, when we'll take over, when we'll become Moshe and Aaron, in other words, we'll fix up a lot of the things that they're messing up. And it's not a shadla because each person has a different way of doing things. And each of them is a correct way. It has nothing to do, there's nothing wrong with it. And the point of this, you feel that we've been proven by your method, fine, try your method. Whatever it is, there's a person's entitled to do that. But the idea is that they didn't ask about the Eishton Zorah. They were right there with Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu was in the Azorah at the same time they were. They were doing the Avodah when the Bensham sent down the fire. They could have asked Moshe, should we add to this fire or not? So what did they do? They made their own logic. They didn't go into asking Moshe as the Messiah, tell us what are we supposed to do? And the Bensham didn't, and that was their mistake. And in Emerson, this thing exists maybe in the whole, that was the chet of the Memtes Shari Tuma. I think we mentioned it that they know if you really counted, the Jews were not murderers, so there should only be 48. And they were not Mizaneh, the Gemara says, so they should only be 47. So, and maybe we can keep them up more for that, and then that and cutting down more. So why you say to women, mem test sharitum? But the idea was they handled things their own way. In other words, they didn't go with a Messiah as a way of, this is the way we have to handle things. No, we make up our own ideas, and by making up our own ideas, we don't pay attention anymore to what was passed down, and therefore we don't continue with tradition. We feel we don't have to listen. We don't feel we are truly independent to make our own decisions about certain things, and this would be mitar to meraglim why they made. Then we don't have to go to Eretz Yisrael if we don't want to. It's not dependent on what he called, but then he must go to Eretz Yisrael or things of that sort. Okay. Anyway, he came out. They went in. They prayed. They said, "In other words, he just needs you to get me past this spot. In other words, that the embarrassment should be over. That I should still be accepted." That's what I should. And they went in. They prayed. They came out again, and the Benshim sent down the Shechina, and the Shechina came down with an interesting thing. It says, it's called by your they reached a phase of ecstasy that from seeing the kedusha of taking place, even though not the Vaviu gets killed. Even though you'll say at that moment maybe we weren't killed yet, but it doesn't seem that they changed. I mean, they didn't find that the attitude of Klal Yisrael went down. Why? Because they saw B'Krevei Kodesh. What did they see? They saw that it's possible that you can be a big tzaddik, but God doesn't forgive. The Reishim is not a vatron. And what that means is that there's no one that can say, because you're a tzaddik, I overlook things because of you. I don't do that. And therefore, it's considered very fair, whatever the Reishim does. And a person doesn't feel that, what do you call it? That's a tremendous Kiddush Hashem in the way of Reishim that judges the world. And the acceptance that they accepted at that time. That was the godless of the thing, and that's also Aaron, that Aaron kept quiet, meaning that no matter how you may think it's unfair or whatever it is there, but he accepted it with complete equanimity, without question, that this is the Dayan of Enshim, the Dayan of Emes, and whatever he does. And there's nothing to say about it, even though you maybe should have felt that it was unfair. You want to kill me, what are you killing my kids for? And so they did an avla, but I could have saved them, and I wasn't able for you to save them, or whatever it is there. But whatever it is, it didn't strike him to do it, to be what he called. And that was the thing there. And they took him out, in other words, from the Machne. They couldn't become Tommy. They were Kohanim, then with Kohen Gadol. Probably at that time, Kohen Gadol was never Matame. And probably those Shilas, they were only as Ganim, or whatever they are. But after he came, they weren't permitted to do it. Yeah, they could, because that was the day they were appointed, or whatever it is. Okay. Then the Benshim tells them about the union of halacha, that the avodah and halacha go the same way. You can't get drunk. And it doesn't really talk about drunkenness in the sense of liquor, hard liquor. It's a yain b'sheichel taste, right? Oh, but in this particular case, it's not like a nozil we are talking about intoxication. But intoxication does not mean that you're drunk, you can't walk a straight line. Intoxication is you drink your Revi'is Yayin. The question is what the percentage of alcohol in it is. You have to wait 18 minutes before you can pass it. Now, according to my brother-in-law, Moshe Tendler, he cited it takes it's 2% alcohol. 2% alcohol, even in the dry states, is not considered alcohol, and you can drink it. I think it's 3.5 or something in beer. That's also, or 5 point something. I don't remember. Well, but something like that. But 2% is not considered anything. And what Israel is that natural alcohol from the grape itself is 6%. Anything else to raise it above that degree, it requires yeast, sugars, things of that sort, that the alcohol becomes what do you call it? Whatever it becomes, when you make it become fermented, right? Fermented to get the higher alcohol content. Otherwise, it's 6%. And you take it, divide it into 2 parts water, so it's only 2%. So that's what he said. Not for PK, you can't. You have the same halacha, really. If you eat dates, you're not allowed to paskin. I don't know how many dates you're talking about, but the problem with dates is dates have very high sugar content. And if you're diabetic would eat it, probably sugar would show up, would jump dramatically. And sometimes the drugs is a tumulus the cup. In other words, when his sugar goes, sometimes diabetic taka becomes, can't think straight. And when the blood sugar goes very high. And therefore, for that also, you can't paskin. No, so, but it doesn't mean you don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes you can be very logical, but you still can't pass it. In the case that the Gemara brings of Papa, that he happened to have eaten tamra, and someone came and asked him a shayla, and he told him, come back tomorrow, and I'll answer you because I just ate tamra. Guy came back the next day. He said, it's a good thing I told you to come back, because if I would have answered yesterday, I would have said, Rav Yochanan, Aloha Rav Yochanan. And I remembered that this is one of the 3 cases that Aloha Rav. And therefore, so basically he knew that then is Aloha Rav Yochanan, Rav Yochanan. And just that the thing of that just happens to be one of the 3 cases that he didn't remember at the moment. And stuff like that. So obviously he knows most of what he's talking about, and it sounds very normal, but he's going to make an error in that little bit to know that it's, and it'll be the wrong halacha, of course. And that's why you have to be clear-headed when you pass in the shayla.
Once on Purim Bar I had a marshal, I went to a road, and he didn't want to answer me. I thought, why would I answer? I really later, maybe I'll see he on Purim, he could pass him.
That's what he used to call the Purim loaf, that the guy doesn't get drunk. One guy sinned in. Okay. Okay. Then he calls him these same children, somebody doesn't say, he doesn't call them Banav HaNesorim. He calls himself the Banav. That they didn't get killed. They're not left over. Left over means they deserve to be killed, but they were left over. I didn't kill them. Right? Now he's calling him Banav HaNesorim because he's now coming into the shayla about eating the chatas. And the shayla was l'doiris or l'shor, and what he called, Moshe Rabbeinu was making a thing for even for doiris for sure, and they disagreed. And in the end, Moshe, when he explains it to them, Aaron explains it to them, that he accepts that, and that he never heard. He was making his own comparison, and then he was wrong. But the fact that they didn't ask him, what they should have done before they ate, which at that point they could have mentioned their opinion, and he would have said his opinion, and it would have been just like by Bezalel when they made the Mishkan. What should he make first, the Mishkan or the Kalim? And he would say his thing, and then Bezalel would say his point, and then Moshe would be Moedes, and then it would have been the same thing here, and it would have been fine before the thing. But they instead went and acted as it's partial what they're saying without asking him, and then they defended their position, which happened to be right, and was right, but he called them, the Torah calls them Bonav HaNesorim. Now with that chesorim that existed, Nodav Avihu, that they didn't follow by asking immediately what to do. They just went up their own things there that existed already by them also to a certain extent. Okay. Now the Torah is going to go into the inyan of the kosher animals. Now, in reality, I don't know Hebrew. I don't know the types of the words. But what I'm going to tell you, and I think it's a way of learning and understanding when you learn yourself anything. I must understand it myself. And then I look at Rashi, and even though Rashi is the Rebbe of Klal Yisrael, there's no question about it. Right? But when I learn Gemara with Rashi first, before I start thinking, so then I have the opinion of Rashi. And it's a good opinion. And therefore I won't change. Right? But because of that, I may not get to understand really what Rashi says, or at least I won't understand what other Rishonim say. So important when you reach Madlega, I guess not when you're first starting to learn, but then later on, when you're starting, you should make a laning without the Rashi. What do I mean? You make a laning, you have your pshat, and then you learn Rashi. When you're learning Rashi, you then understand what is it that Rashi is saying that it's important. Because I learned this pshat, and Rashi doesn't seem to agree with me. So why doesn't he agree with me? So now I have to work it out why Rashi doesn't agree with me. And then maybe by looking at Tesis, I'll see that Tesis would agree with me. Then I have to understand why Tesis doesn't agree with Rashi. After I worked on Rashi to try to understand him, and now that I do, I have a question on what I had before, and goes weiter and weiter. And that's the way a person gets to understand what he's learning and how he learns and how he can continue to steig. So the same thing applies over here in the reading of the psukim. Because we have a basic question. Why is it necessary for the Torah to list the 4 animals that have the 3 that don't have split hoofs, but eat a chew their cud, and the 1 that chooses that has split hoofs and doesn't chew his cud, when all he had to say was like about a fish? You have to have a snapia caskesis. You have to have fins and scales. If you don't have fins and scales, you're treif. If you don't have split hoofs and chew your cud, you're treif. So what do they need? So I know it doesn't have it. So what do I have to explain to you what the name of the animal is? So I think that the word is that there are 3 requirements really here. One requirement, the first requirement is, and that's why we may have made a mistake. We may make a mistake by the way the Torah is written, that we may think it's one or the other is enough. You must have like whole mafreses Parshas sheshas says process malas ger babhem. Doesn't have a vav over there to malas gera and is malas gera. It says malas gera sheshas, and sheshas says the process means split hoofs, right? So what is kol mafreses Parshas mean? Kol mafreses Parshas seems to make from the Ibn Ezra And I don't think it's like Rashi. I think it seems to mean that it's hoofed. All kosher animals must come from a hoofed animal. Now, even though you're a hoofed animal, you're not kosher unless the hoofs are split and you chew your cud. So now the question is, does it mean you have to have only just the split animal, just the split hoofs, or chewing your cud, as long as you're hoofed, you're kosher, or not? And the Torah tells you there are only four animals in the world that are hoofed, and that three of them have chewed their cud and are not split hoofed, and one is split hoofed and doesn't chew his cud. And that makes enough gemene for us. Let's say if we recognize what a goat looks like or what a chazel looks like, and we find geschochten animal, in a case where, let's say, all the butchers are kosher butchers in the place, and you find a geschochten animal, and you recognize what a chazer is, then you automatically can eat it. Because, it's not a chazer. So it must be a goat, it must be something else. You see the hoofs, that they're split, so you can know that it's a kosher animal. Because there is no other animal in the world except the chazer. It seemed I don't remember how many years ago this was. It probably could be 50 years ago, if not more. They discovered in Burma or Malaysia, they mentioned it, a new animal that had split hoofs and only had 2 stomachs, not 4 stomachs. Maybe it is there. And it was not really chewing its cud until they came to the conclusion that it's really a chazel. But it looks a little different than another one. It's a much higher animal, had higher feet, but it was still considered a chazel. I don't know if you can tie it maybe to justify Rashi's pshat that seems to touch on Sheshanafes's Parshas already, that it means split hoofs. What do you call it? Because if you take a look at the animals that are not kosher, I'm going to go with not with the Art Scroll translation, or the what do you call it, or the Jewish Publication Society of our Neves, meaning a hair. Because that's the case. There are hundreds of them. That's the guy that wrote a book against disagreeing with the Torah, saying that the Torah didn't know anything, is because they had there's hundreds of animals that chew their cud and don't have split hoofs, and that is true, and therefore it can't mean that. And so how do I know that an animal that has that doesn't have hoofs is treif? Because it says in the end of the parsha, where is it? Anything that walks on 4 feet to anything there is treif. I don't need a pasuk for that. There's no question of whether they chew their cud, don't chew their cud. They walk on 4 feet without hoofs, they are treif. Now, as poor animals are all treif. I don't need another pasuk. We're talking about hoofed animals. And therefore, the whole point of the hair does not belong in there at all. There's no question. I've seen this translated already by 2 different people, that the 3 are the dromedary, the Bactrian, and the llama. Now, you'll say they're all camels in a way. They're all the camel family, if you want to be technical, but there's definitely different. A dromedary is the camel of the Middle East, of the Near East, the Middle East, or whatever it is, the hot deserts, goes with 1 hump. The Bactrian is the camel of the cold desert, of the Gobi. It has two humps. The llama is a mountain animal in South America. Also a beast of burden. They're all beasts of burden. The camel itself has a split hoof on top of a pad. There's a pad underneath it and a split hoof on top of it. And people actually thought in the First World War, my father told me that they brought the Russian army was that organized and that mechanized that they were still using camels in their thing there. And they brought their camels and people came running to say there's another kosher animal they didn't know about. And obviously they didn't realize that it's not cut through and through. But if you go to a petting zoo and you have a llama and the goat, pick the feet up. And you'll see that the goat, they both look the same in the front. The foot are completely split in the front, completely straight through, right? And for about this much. But underneath the foot is about an inch. That's about all it is, about an inch in the goat. And it's very, maybe a quarter inch deep, the hoof at that point, as opposed to the other part, which is about a half inch or 3/4 of an inch. I think there's a very small piece that it's cut straight, clear through, and the llama's is not. That's the difference. In other words, that little bit of a difference makes a difference. So there you have 3 minim, and those are the 3 hoofed animals that are not split hoofs. But you can say maybe they have some kind of a look like the split hoof, and that's what we're talking about. Could be that therefore returns to Rashi. But if not, it means means hoofed animals that are split. Okay. And of those, those are the only 3 that chew their cud. So a horse and a donkey and all of these things don't chew their cuds. Okay. Now, why did he write it without a vav over there? I guess because a vav may not have helped him. In other words, if he would have put koma freses parsa v'sheshas shesa process umalas gera b'behema, you may think it means an or, because a vav doesn't always mean an and; it can also mean an or. So therefore, in this case, he may have brought it to mean a good. So I don't know why he could have put in 2 psukim. I don't know. That's the case. Might as well enumerate them. I can't answer the reason for the Torah writing the way he does, but we have this chiluk, I think. Yeah. Yeah. The question is, again, is every fish on its own? No, we know klal kol hayesim and atomei kol hayesim. There are sometimes fish, after a certain amount of generations, that will be born without scales. Without fins, you can't be born. But without fins, without scales, you can be born sometimes. It goes on the individual fish or not. There's also the kingfish that as you take it out of the water, it loses its scales. That's good. It's called mayim. It's in the water. It has its scales. Scales mean something that's easily removed. You have shellfish that have scales that are very hard to remove. Those are not called scales. Then you had there's one thing that there's one that's used as bigotry again, a Jewish bigotry, justified or not, but we have to understand the sum of it, and at least to maybe we can even smile at it, and it was me say that's shtus and all that. They talk about that the Danish, when he asked the animals or the birds or the stuff, he asked the ones that were not gentle birds, that had no good midas. They attack. What do you call it? Hawks, eagles, whatever it is. They not vampires. The ones that eat the dead people. Vultures, stuff of that stuff. That thing it's a bad meat. You're waiting for the guy to die so you can eat him, something like that. And so the shaila is an animal is called the chasida, one of the birds that's slave. And obviously this is against Hasidim. So the shaila was, the chasida. Why? Because it's a very generous bird. Very gives over everything. And so why is it treif? Only to its own kind, not to anybody. You'll only be nice to your own people. And that was the point of what they think. So I'm saying it used to come up as a point that they used to talk about. But the idea is that the Rebbeinu would not make something that's good treif. That much we do see from this joke or whatever you want to call it, this bigotry. Okay. Then you have the idea: can you accept other people's kabbalahs? So you have the Shiva has a whole tshuva. I don't remember the listing of the tshuva, but he has a tshuva on this about a pheasant, I believe, or not a pheasant, one of the type of birds that there is a kabbalah in Germany that they do eat it. That's brought down, and there's others in Germany that did not eat it. And he holds when you have such a question, you can't go by name alone. You can't just say, they ate this, the pheasant. You have to go say, this is the bird that was called a pheasant, and they ate it. I say, witness that that's what they ate, and stuff like that. And then you can be samech on it. But normally you don't get such a this. No one's around. They just heard the name, then the thing, whatever it is. Most parts, the only ones that I think that eat the chagovim are the teimonim, and obviously they have a kabbalah, which are the 4 types that are kosher, and they eat them. We don't eat any of them. That's because we don't have a kabbalah. Now, is it pshat that we say we have the kabbalah? The kabbalah is we don't eat any. Well, our Kabbalah is we don't know, and therefore we don't eat. So that's the question, which is what the Shiva close about. That if there's a specific Kabbalah not to eat them, then we can't go against that Kabbalah. If the Kabbalah is we have no Kabbalah not to eat them, we just can't eat them because we don't know which ones are we don't have a Kabbalah, which are the ones that we could eat, then we could be samech on that Kabbalah. Where did it affect us really to a big deal? And this happened in my lifetime, okay? I was born the year my parents came to America. And I'm talking about when I was a little kid. And what did we have for more at the table? Only chein. Not only the Russian Jews, but the Polish Jews also. Pretty much, all the people around our neighborhood were those. We had no Israelis around us. We had no, all European Jews. And everybody ate chein on famora. Why? Because that's the only mora they had. There's no lettuce in any of those countries. It was cold, so therefore it was all cold, and therefore there was no, that was all you had. And then we heard that in Yisrael they had one Pesach, Erev Pesach, I mean, they threw it down by the grocery store, the Italian lettuce, the romaine lettuce that we had there. It was filthy. As much you had to be washed like, what do you call it there? And nobody knew we can go to Little Italy, which was only a few blocks over, and buy it all the time. I think there, but the mice is so this is what they're eating, and wow, we can eat it and stuff like that. And the Rashivas Atzal still ate chaim. Now again, they say that you can't use that Kabbalah. Maybe you could. Anything. On the other hand, if you time it's chazeres, maybe a better level of chayin, of morah than morah is, and stuff like that. Just don't know what chazeres is. But they tell me that that's chazeres, and that's what he called it, that's the Kabbalah, and this is the best, and whatever it is there. And I think those are fine. So it's romaine lettuce would be very good. And obviously it's a lot easier to eat than chayin. Anything there. So why didn't we all eat romaine lettuce? And adayam, we still take chayin. We still go into a lot of the stores and they still sell chayin. Why is anybody eating chayin? He goes, that's my Kabbalah. I don't have a Kabbalah about lettuce. I don't know anything about lettuce, and so on. There are Jews that have a Kabbalah. Fine, that's very nice about them. Then there's some who want to extend that Kabbalah. What's the difference? This lettuce, any lettuce, who cares? Anything there? Maybe that they're right too. Who knows? I don't have no such Kabbalah, so I eat chayin. Right? What happens in the Shivin, and then that's what he did. He had all the years he ate chayin until the last few years when he was not able to eat chayin, where it was not healthy, ready for him, and the point of can affect him. So then he ate the romaine lettuce. So I assume the point was because he had no negative Kabbalah against it, I just don't have a Kabbalah for it. So therefore, I can still eat chayin, I eat chayin. Once I can't, so then all of a sudden I have no reason to reject the Kabbalah. So we use the romaine already at that time. And obviously most people they eat romaine, even when they want to eat a little chayin, they stick a little chayin into the romaine, which I don't understand at all what the purpose of it is. Make it bitter. There's no mitzvah to make it bitter. If there's a mile in chazeres, because chazeres is bitter, and the heart is bitter, and the green, the soft, is sweet. The idea is that the person should know that morah doesn't have to be bitter, the complete bitter. When it starts bitter, that's when you do tshuva. When you see it's a little bitter, that's when you do tshuva. You don't wait till it gets real bitter before you do tshuva. Chayin is no question about it. You just smell it when you just ripe it and you just smell it. At that point, your tears come pouring out of you. You start choking on the thing though, because you can't breathe in the air with it in the thing there. Then you know that's morah. That means you're dead. The Ben Shem really gave you an einish. That's too late to do tshuva on such a thing. The tshuva is when it's light, when it's not yet a problem yet. That's when you do tshuva. That's the point of tshuva. Okay. So therefore, what's the point of adding it? I mean, if you hold that this is chazeres, so then eat it, or the whole thing of it. I don't need that extra bit of this and the thing there. And if I hold it's not, so then what are you eating it in the first place? Okay. Mm-hmm. There's an inyan between an avela and a treifa. A treifa is not tummy. An avela is tummy. What's an avela? An avela is something that drops dead. A treifa is something that you kill. And usually when you're shechting, you're trying to shecht good, and somehow you goof the shchita. So the mice says it's treif, you can't eat it, but it's not tummy. And I think one of the reasons maybe for that halacha is that if there would be tummy, it would be very hard to shecht in one place. You'd have to be very, very careful how the animals touch each other. The person touches it touches the thing, and they're making the other food there, tummy. So therefore, the thing, and could be that it's like a credit for trying to make it kosher. Like in other words, now you're not mafkin already how you killed it. But the idea is you were trying to make it kosher as a milah, even though it's not kosher. So the thing of yeah. Then there's the old machlekes within the Rosh Hashivas Atzal, and they say from Divrei Chaim, I have no idea if Divrei Chaim actually says it or not, but that's what people say. But we'll say what it's talking about. What is metame a person? With Mason Bom, the Parshas is over here. Al tishaksus nafshei seichem b'cholashes asheretz leizetamu behem nit Mason Bom. Nit Mason Bom means there's a union of timtum halev. In other words, if you eat tafus, you actually lose concepts of chilukim that you could have. You become tummy. When you have a certain timtum halev, your heart becomes stopped up that it can't absorb certain emission. And then it's a terrible thing. The Shiva says what it means is, it means that if you didn't have Veiche, we write Semach on the Teire, and you ate something that was treif, so it has timtum halev. What would be such a thing which you call Semach on the Teire, not Semach on the Teire, according to Rosh Shiva? He has a tshuva on this. I think it's first Orach Chaim and Tess, I think it is, I'm not sure. That he says over there, it was got written to me, because I remember something in the house that happened, and I asked him the emissary guy of it when I was in Lakewood, was in the year to something, and he wrote me that it was. That the idea is if I believe in Eidechem the Seforim, so I did what I was supposed to do. Now the terrorist said rely on somebody else. I did rely on him. He fooled me, and what he called, and therefore it's not metamte my lay because I did ka'alocha. I ate tafis by shegeg or beoinus even. That's not even called a shegeg. It's an oinus because I relied on the Torah, and the guy fooled the Torah. So I mean, what he fooled me. What happened if I decide that I am the one? I don't trust Jews. I don't think that. What I learned. That guy I trust. The way he looks honest and nice, and I trust him. I don't rely on what the terrorists I trust all from a Yidden. And the guy fooled me, then it's with tamtem halev. It's also amazed. Amazed doesn't mean you get malchus for it. Amazed just means that it's not a shogig to say it's like, it's a chatas that you did a gavera, you did amazing. You need Yom Kippurim for that. You need it's not a slicha. You need a mechila for it, nothing like that. But you don't get malchus for it, obviously, because you didn't have any intention of eating talfus. But if you don't trust people and you end up eating talfus because you decided what to trust and who to trust, that's very good. Now it happened to be many years ago, Rabbi Green, the Rebbe Yeshiva, asked Rosh Yeshiva from a Meshech Chochmah in Parshas Veschanon, where he says that the Indian of that they were able to eat. If you learn out the poster, they would eat that everything in the house you were allowed to eat. What they captured from the Mitzrayim are called the bottom Aleim called Tuva Shalom Mileso, Baris Tuva Shalom Chatzafto, whatever it is there. Means even Chazer you were allowed to eat. Whatever was in the storehouses of the Canaanim that they captured, they were allowed to eat. She says, why did it say like a big warning, you may forget, because there's metimtum halev. So the Meshech Chochmah, it seems the bullet point that there's timtum halev, even though the nation permitted me to do it. Says the Rosh Hashiva Zach, that it's mutter. And afal pikein, it's also. In other words, it's still timtum alev. In other words, you can eat from edech and then be surim. That's true. But l'maisa, it's treif. So you still matamtem the lev. The mitzvahs of being treif and tamtem lev. And the Rashiva said, well, in that part, you can argue on the Meshech Chochmah. I had other kashas on the Meshech Chochmah. I couldn't do it because in Parshas if you have a similar posik like that, you're going to have all the thing. You're going to have you have all these things at houses you didn't do. And again, the same idea. And it says that your heart will become big and you'll become a mashma, that because of success, even though it's not my success, I didn't do that, I didn't fill the houses up, but the Rebbeinu Shalom did it, but we conquered the land. So therefore, you may think that this kumcha, it's your big thing. So therefore, that should be a way you'll be kosher that you can do yourself. That's what the Torah is warning you about, not about the thing, but the conclusions that he has. The Indian over there, they have to look in the Meshech Chochmah already. He's talking about if a guy's sick, is it better to eat or to shech the behem or to eat 2 kisaisim of treifus and stuff like that. Now, because you don't know how much you have to eat, so it's better to get a shech the kosher animal because you're doing one malacha and something like that. So that could be true anyway. That the conclusion of the point has nothing to do with the actual point of it. And that look over there, and there's reasons of other things Rosh Hashiva said that can do, but without knowing exactly what it says over there, it's not good to talk about it.
Some people
about the riff, huh?
Some people aren't some about certain Aksharim. Some people are not signing up on certain Aksharim, whether it's Rabbanut or whatever. Yeah,
the Shayla, do they know them or not? There's the Shayla. And both the guys who ask, there's no Yichus, and the guys who say there's no Yid. They say, I know the guy, and he's a former Yid, and you don't like him, that's your problem. But I happen to know him. I mean, listen out, but used to hold of Rabag, the old Zayden. What he called. He said he's an Al-Khayid. And that was when and him came to the problem, the triangle K. I mean, not on what he called. So what he called, he used to say he's an Al-Khayid. I know the guy was placed in a cup. Okay, now there's different things. Now you want to argue on his Torah, that's a different story. That is not an argument on his honesty. That's an argument on his Torah. The Rif in the Gemara in Yume, with this Gemara of the Feisenbaum is when the Tamtembum. That's why it has Timtum Alev in the Tamtembum. It's spelled that way instead of Mason. It explains that it goes like the Rosh Hashiva. The Rif is over there is not the Rif. The Rif is, but he was a Kadmon. He's a guy, someone in the 1700s. The thing there that he was on the Yankiv, he's in the Yankiv, and he says Beferish it goes on Chet. He explains Digduk wise that it goes on Chet. He explains the Gemara says it goes on Chet. He explains why that it goes on Chet, and it can't be misinterpreted to go on the Metzias of the thing. Saying I can't ask you, I don't know Hebrew one way or the other, so I can't really give you an opinion. Okay. That was what the Rosh Hashiva said. Okay. And Raif Moshe Rabbeinu also, there's supposed to be the mice with the Divrei Chaim, supposed to be that he saw a kid that was a filthy kid, and he said, oh, he must have had from his drank milk from a goye, and therefore he's so vild because he had Timtum Alev. That's very schwer to say that because Moshe Rabbeinu had said that he didn't want to eat from the Mitzrayim when Bas Paro tried to give him the milk, said because he's going to speak with the Shechina, not because he's going to be eating treif. He's going to speak on mouth, he's going to speak to the Shechina, it doesn't go from a guy. That's the thing, though. That's the thing. Then the last piece of the settlers is Yanei Hashem Hamal Eschem Eretz Mitzrayim, and this is the thing. What does this have to do? K'Kedosh Yinanu Kan Kodesh Hashem, because of Shkotzim, that you guys or anyone that doesn't eat is going to have this smile. You say, what's the mile in that? So the Shiva explained. He says, everybody doesn't want to eat bugs in the vegetables. There's no question about it. So when we say we look through the vegetables and then teloyim and this and that, and then we get rid of the bugs. I mean, Goyim also don't want to see that, right? So except that they look at it, look at that, there's nothing there. Oh, then we, because there's an Issa, we look pretty hard to see if there's anything there. And that's the difference. That makes us holy. Before there's talk is something which is spontaneous generation, which l'chayr says hanadin by the sheretz haloretz, that the when does the Isa become? When it crawls on the ground. Now we know that something that comes from treif is treif, right? So what's the point? So usually they used to learn that there was a spontaneous generation, and the Chazal believe in spontaneous generation. Science doesn't believe in it; they disproved it. So therefore, Chazal don't know what I'm talking about. And that's been the scientists, the teachers in school when I went to Egypt. That's what they were. They used to make fun of Chazal and something like that. The Maisa doesn't mean that at all. It means mamish what we're eating. An Isa, when you breathe, you're eating bugs. You don't see them, but you can get a strong enough microscope, you'll be able to see them. Drink water, there's bugs in them. And then we're not misaning them. Those you drink them all the time. The bugs that you can't see of things, that's kosher. There are bugs that are also from the second they're born. We see them. You see them, they're also right away. You don't have to be choichesh halotz. But there are bugs that are mutter when they're born because you can't see them. But somewhere in life, they're going to become big enough that you'll be able to see them. That's the point where it becomes one also only when it's choichesh halotz. I think. That's those are different types of bugs. That's what they call mulim, whatever they have when you have flour that stands and stuff like that, and you get the bugs in them and stuff like that. These are the bugs that one by not using DDT is what grows up to be the bugs that we have now. That's why it's so many bugs now, because they asked the DDT. When they used to use DDT originally, it killed the bugs in such a state that they never were able to grow to the side that you were able to see them, so you were able to eat it. So therefore, it was never a problem. But now it became a big issue. That's the thing, though. Anyway, have a good Shabbos, have a good Shiur, and I guess good noch Yontif, whatever.
Next week. What time is next week?
Next week will be 11:45, probably. Next week the times changed already, right? Yeah. So next week will be 11:45. Mi'at Hashem.
Good Shabbos to the Rav. Good Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbos, Rebbe.